Hello Internet, so nice to see you. If you read a book on jazz harmony, they will tell you that if you play a major or a dominant 7th chord, then the 11th or the 4th over that chord it's an avoid note and that you should not play it either in the harmony or the melody. Just to clarify, if you play a C major chord, the 11th is the F note. Same for the C7th dominant, or for a major 7th chord. Now, in the way I just played it, some of you will find this note perfectly acceptable and others will find it incredibly dissonant. Yet it is a fact that this avoid note is actually used in real music. Listen to those examples. In this first example, the first chord of the chord progression is a B major, and we are playing the E note on top, which is the 4th. Now, of course, this E note contrasts sharply with the D sharp note in the B chord, but in context it sounds good. In fact, it sounds so good that Satriani plays this note also at the very beginning of the melody. Let's see a completely different example. Again, some of you will like this note, and some other may not like this note or the effect it produces, but it's a fact that this note is used and it can be used to good effect. So what is happening? Why is this note forbidden in jazz harmony? At the beginning, I was reading this and just thinking to myself, ha, those jazz people and their rules. I will play whatever I want. Well, it turns out that actually there is a very good reason for calling this an avoid note, but it's not the reason you may think or the reason you may know. So let's see exactly what is happening, because by knowing this, we learn a lot on how music is made and how to make your music sound great. First of all, let's see the wrong reasons to forbid this note. One reason that jazz textbook give is that this note is forbidden because the interval between the major third of the chord and the 11th it's a flat 9, and the flat 9 interval is very dissonant and so it's unacceptable. Well, it is true that this interval is dissonant. Even if in context, to me, it sounds acceptable. But that's just my opinion. It is a fact, though, that in many other chords used in jazz harmony, you do have intervals of a flat 9 between the notes, for instance, in altered 7 dominant chords. So for instance, on a C7th flat 9, I have the notes C, E, G, B flat, D flat. And the interval between C and D flat, it's a flat 9. Now, of course, in this case, you could say that we do want this dissonant to add more movement to the dominant chord that is already a dissonant chord, but it's a fact that just saying that the flat 9 is dissonant is not reason enough to forbid it. Another reason I've seen in jazz textbook is that the 11th it's forbidden because it's dissonant with the major 7th of the chord. So, for instance, if I'm playing a C major 7, my notes are C, E, G, B, and the 11th, which is F, it's dissonant with the B note. But then again, to my ear, and you can argue that my ears are different than yours, but to my ear, this dissonance sounds perfectly acceptable in the right context. And also this explanation that we don't use the 11th because it's dissonant with the major 7th does not explain another thing, because you see this 11th is forbidden also on dominant 7th chord, and in C dominant 7 the notes are C, E, G, B flat, and this B flat is perfectly consonant with this F note. So if the problem is the dissonant with the major 7th, why can't we use this F on a dominant chord? It gets even worse, in a sense, when you see what note the textbook is suggesting you to use instead of the 11th. Most textbooks will suggest you to use a sharp 11 instead. Now, I personally do like a lot the sound of the sharp 11th over either a major, major 7th, or dominant 7th chord. Over a C major 7th chord, the sharp 11 sound this way. And over a dominant 7th chord, the sharp 11 sound this way. Now, I think this is a very cool sound to use. I have nothing against using that, but it can be argued that this note is actually more dissonant than the 11th. After all, this sharp 11 produce a tritone with the root note of the chord, C F sharp. And if you play it over a dominant 7th chord, it's even worse in terms of dissonance, because this F sharp produces a diminished fourth with the 7th, which is B flat. So everything I said up to now is that we can't simply say that the 11th is a avoid note because it's dissonant, because it's not really as dissonant, and then the other note suggests that the sharp 11 can be argued to be at least as dissonant. Now, which one of the two you perceive as more dissonant actually depends a lot on the music you listen to. Another justification that has been given to not use the 11th is that it does not sound jazz. And honestly, I can get more behind this kind of reasoning. If you want to play something as sound jazz, definitely the sharp 11 sounds more jazz than the natural 11th. But there is a problem here, and so even this is not a good justification. What is the problem? The problem is that if you go and check in the jazz repertoire, you will find that the 11th, but in fact most of the other notes that are called avoid notes, have actually been used. So for instance, in many solos by Charlie Parker, you can find the natural 11th played on a dominant 7th chord or even on a major chord. Even worse, because another avoid note on a dominant 7th chord is the major 7th, so on a C7 you don't play the B note, but Charlie Parker seems to play these whenever he wants. And before you say, but he's playing it only as a passing note, it's full of example when the note is not passing at all. The note is not resolved either on a C or a B flat. So at this point one may wonder, if Charlie Parker plays it, why is this note labeled as an avoid note and we are told to not play it? So here's why. There is actually a perfectly good reason to forbid this note in a textbook. And it's absolutely important that you understand this reason, even if it's not stated explicitly in the textbook, because this will change the whole way you have to learn music. The 11th on a major or dominant chord, it's an avoid note, and it has been forbidden to you, the reader of the textbook, because the textbook is trying to help you learn. You see, when you are writing your first pieces of music, this note does not really sound jazz and does not really sound good either in the style you are learning, unless you know how to use them. And I can argue that Charlie Parker knew how to use them. Other notes are much easier to use. So the textbook is trying to help you by doing its job, by making you avoid any kind of situation where you think you're doing the right thing, but your ear is not developed yet enough to be able to manage the kind of dissonance that you are playing. It's not that this note is forbidden in actual music. It's just forbidden to students until they develop enough ear to understand how to work with that note. This is nothing new. This is the exact same procedure that it's used in classical harmony and counterpoint texts. All those complex rules that a counterpoint text will give you are just guidelines that help you, a beginner in counterpoint, to write in that style of music so that you are not getting in situations where it's hard to resolve those dissonances. All those rules are helping you choosing how to put those notes together so that they sound good. So every note that may sound bad in some specific situation, it's just completely forbidden for the time being, so you don't have to worry about those. But again, those rules are just guidelines while you learn. Once you learned, when you actually master all these, you can make any kind of exception you want, because now you developed your ear and now you can make your own independent judgment on if you like this note or not, and how to use it and when to use it, how to resolve it, in what context you use it, and so you can make your own music. The textbook is just trying to protect you from this kind of ambiguous situation before you are ready. And that's a very good reason to do that. The only problem is that the textbook should be telling you that. The textbook should be telling you rules contained in this book, or those rules contained in this book, are just temporary until you are a student. But textbooks simply seem to forget about that and then never tell you that. And this is true not only for jazz textbook, but also for classical textbook, in harmony, in counterpoint, and in fact in pretty much any text of music theory. Theory is not supposed to restrict you. If there are restrictions, it's just to help you grow. Those restrictions then need to be lifted once you finish learning that book, so that you can explore music directly without being mediated by those rules. So if you want, those rules are just training wheels, and once you learn how to ride your bike, you can remove those training wheels. Now, if you want to learn how to make all your chords sound cool and how to use different kinds of dissonance on top of them, I do warmly recommend you check out my course Complete Chord Mastery. That is not a book, it's a complete video course that explains to you everything you need to know for both classical harmony and jazz harmony and how to apply them on guitar. This is not the standard harmony course that has been designed for piano player. This course has been designed instead specifically for guitar players. All the theory is done on the fretboard, so you can actually apply this in real life and in your music, whatever style you play. If you like this video, don't forget to smash on that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and click on notification, otherwise YouTube will not tell you when I put up a new video. And if you have any friends who you think will like those kinds of video, let them know. I'm really grateful to everybody who supports this channel and helps it grow. If you have any questions, don't forget to write them in the comment. And this is Tommaso Zillio on Music Theory for Guitar. And until next time. Enjoy.